Okay, we're in lesson 5 and we're going to start talking about functions. The code as it's written doesn't do hardly anything other than load into memory in the way we've talked about in previous lessons. There isn't anything in our web page because neither the HTML code or the JavaScript code put anything there. The only thing the HTML code does is puts the title Lesson 5 in the Browser tab and causes the JavaScript code to load with the opening script tag. The variables are loaded into the stack. The object myObj and the function myfunc are loaded into the heap. When we ask for the value of myObj, it returns the whole object. As well, when we ask for the value of myfunc, it returns the whole function. But as we've already discussed, when we're dealing with an object, it's because we would like to get the value of one of its properties. In a similar way, with a function, we don't want it to return the function itself. We want the function to execute, and to execute a function, we use the variable, but we add this structure. When you have this in front of the function, it invokes the function. Invoke means to start the execution of the function. When we invoke this function, it returns the value undefined. The function is executing, but when written in this way, it doesn't return anything to the console. When the function executes, the first line creates a variable and assigns a value. The second line creates another variable and assigns another value. And the third line does a calculation. The problem is that it doesn't do anything with the calculation. We need to add the word returned in order to return the calculation. Now, when we run the function, it returns the value of the function. Okay, I've changed the code for a little while in order to show some concepts. Here we have an object that represents a head and has the properties eyes, lips, and voice. And each one of these properties has an object as its value that has properties of its own. If we want to get the value for the color of the eyes, we write this line. And it returns the value. But if I try to get the value of this variable, we receive an error. This is because the information inside of a function doesn't exist to be accessed except when the function is running. An object is a structure that stores and organizes data. A function is a structure that contains lines of action. As we see here, our object represents a head, but the function represents the action of speaking. When a function executes, it requires data. and possibly it will get it from one or more objects. Possibly the purpose of the function is to change the data, do calculations with the data and return a value, or simply create visual effects on the screen. But the strangest thing about a function is that it only exists while it's executing. These are only lines of code in our JavaScript file. When these lines of code are read by the interpreter, as we know, the variable habla is loaded into the stack. This part in blue loads into the heap. The part in blue is the function for real. The word function is a keyword, which means it's part of the language. This word tells the interpreter that what comes next is a function, and it should be loaded into the memory in an appropriate manner. After the function loads, we have something like this. The variable in the stack is pointing to the function in the heap. But these lines in the function aren't simply copied to memory. The information in these lines, the variables and their values, calls to other functions, all of it is loaded in a way that is very fast and efficient to get to. One of the differences between objects and functions is that an object is like something physical, whereas a function is like the ability to do something. In our code, the variable a head points to an object, and as we know, a head is physical. You can see it with your eyes. But the variable habla points to a function, the ability to talk. And as we know, the ability to talk and the action of talking are two different things. And it's here that we distinguish between the function itself, the ability to talk, and the invocation of the function, the action of talking. When our JavaScript file loads into memory, what loads is the ability to talk. When we want to produce the action of talking, we invoke the function. And as we've talked about before, to invoke a function, we use the variable name followed by this structure. When we want to get something from inside of an object, we simply use the variable name that connects us to the box that's in memory. But our function that's in memory is the ability to talk, not the action of talking. When a person talks, he is using his ability to speak, and he can do it over and over. But each time, the expression is unique. The person can scream or whisper, say this or that, using different tones in various situations, but the whole time he's using the same ability to talk. If the habla function is well designed, it can handle all of the talking situations. To add information about all of the different and unique situations, we put data inside of this structure when we invoke the function. But we'll speak more about that in a minute. The way in which JavaScript manages the invocation of a function is by creating a copy and putting it in a different location of memory. This copy is called a function context, and it exists in memory until the action terminates. When you talk, you begin talking and you stop talking, but your ability to talk remains. All actions are like this. This symbol begins the action, and this symbol ends the action. When the interpreter reads this symbol, the copy in memory, the function context, disappears. When our habla function is invoked, a copy, a function context, is created in memory. Each line executes one at a time until the termination symbol, and then the copy, the function context, disappears from memory. As we know, when we invoke this function, it will return undefined. And this is because we need to add the word return. Now when we invoke it, it returns the value. This is a good time to pause the video and study the screen very carefully. You need to think about the function context that's created during invocation, understand how you use the variables along with the string to produce the result, and understand how the variables got their values from the object. I've changed the code to have a song object and a play function. With this code, we are going to talk about this structure. When we invoke a function, we use the same structure to pass data to the function context. But not all functions require that we pass data to them. Our play function, the way it's written, doesn't need any information passed to it when it is invoked, because it has all the information it needs to process its lines. Imagine that there's a guitarist who plays in the street. The play function is his ability to play. When we ask him to play, he begins playing. The song that he's playing is in the part of his memory that has the song object. Our request to play is the invocation of the function, and his playing is the expression of his ability to play. Now imagine that there's another guitarist. When we ask him to play, he informs us that we need to pay him. Well, this is a different function. He still has the same ability to play, but he needs more information before he can express his ability to play. And we write it like this. Now we're beginning to talk about programming for real. Here we have logic, which refers to a decision our program has to make. If this is true, then do this. Or if it's not true, do this. This is the process that allows us to make a computer act like a human being. After testing and getting the logic correct, the computer can do it 1,000 times per second, perfectly every time. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's because of this that the power and the pay of a programmer can be incredible. Now, when we invoke the function, we pass it some data. The data we pass it is held in this variable. And of course, we can name this variable whatever we want. But when we use the variable inside of the function, of course we have to use the same name. When we invoke the function like this, it's the same as passing a 0. Therefore, when this line is processed, the value of dinero is 0. This symbol is greater than or equal. Logic always results in true or false, and this is false. This is the way humans function. Many times per minute, we ask ourselves questions, and our next action depends on the answer. With our function, if the answer to this is true, then we do this. But if it's false, we do this. If we invoke the function like this, we pass 0.5. And the answer to this is false. And again, we return this. But if we invoke it like this, we pass 1. And the answer is true. So this time we do this. And when I press enter, it returns the value. And with that, we end Lesson 5.